There comes a moment in a man's life where it differentiates him between his past self and his current self. What I'm saying is I'm terrified of what I'm about to do. I have a massive chunk of stainless steel, and this is going to ultimately turn into some sort of boomerang looking shape with 4 triangles in it. It is ultimately going to be the exhaust manifold. I have a couple things working against me. One is that stainless steel is very gummy. It's very hard to cut. You have to go slow. 2, I have no patience. 3, I have some of the tools that are capable of cutting it very fast. And so what I'm gonna do right now is try to guess how close this is. I measured it, but I'm gonna try and get this thing to cut and clean off all this scale and all the thick top layer of this. One of the other things working against me is that this thing's bowed. So we're actually squaring it up on this step. So I'm gonna go very slow, but this is the first time I've used a face mill. It took 2 hours, otherwise. It could, in fact, the speed we're cutting, we could cut through the holders and everything, because this is all steel. It would be weird, but it would work. I've moved those even further out of the way so I can run a straight path up there, and I'm basically just gonna go up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, and I know I won't hit those. It's definitely squirting. I had those numbers calculated for a small tool and a very thin cutting. This is not that at all. Well, that's one rough pass. That's a lot of metal. Oh wow, you can really see the vibration hitting in that area. I'm just learning, but that's actually really bad. My goal, being aggressive, just wasted my time. I'm not creative enough to solve this in a different way with all those holders in the way, so I'm gonna see you guys in 2 hours. I'm actually about to go back to Pikes Peak for something really wild with Top Gear, and I have this bag all set up to go for that. Clean pair of underwear, that's important. Earplugs. One of the most important things is these little packets right here. I am so thankful that AG1 makes this style, because literally fits right in there. I'm good to go. That's just one approach to athletic greens. This is my other one, which I use in the shop, and of course it's much easier to get to. I go through this stuff like crazy. This is a little kit that you get. If you look up at the word comprehensive in the dictionary, you would almost see AG1, because it's not just multivitamins, it's not just physical health, mental health, gut health, antioxidants, adaptogens, alkaline. To me, it always cracks me up that it even has probiotics. Like, I think of that only as a dairy thing. Oh yes, this is actually really good for me because I'm almost out. Vitamin D3 and actually K2 as well. It's all inside of an olive oil base, phenomenal. Having it on the go, having it in the shop for my smoothies, all the different ways I take it, I genuinely feel better. I feel like it starts my day right. Mentally, physically, I've been very healthy, especially with that as being a major part of my diet, just general life approach. Go to athleticgreens.com/RobDahm to get started on your order. Athletic Greens is giving my community a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 and 5 free travel packets with your first order. That's athleticgreens.com/RobDahm. Now that everybody else is gone, I can finally get some work done. Beginning the coolest phase of let the CNC machine do its job. So I cleared off the top of it at the expense of 2 tools. I learned a little bit more there, but what I'm about to do is start making all the little pockets, the little holes that go in there. And I'm gonna be using this little stubby tool to do that. And this little stubby tool is also rounded on the edges so it doesn't chip. Should take about another 1.5 hours. I'm gonna let it go, but we'll see what happens. This is the beginning of the end for this piece. We are now going to take this little guy and boop a center hole for each of these, and then the bolt holes here and here, here and here, so on, so on. So that's gonna be pretty straightforward. Then I'm actually gonna drill straight through there to make it easier for milling holes in those spots. That's step 1, and then about 4 hours of cutting all the rest of the steps. The drilling is a gratifying thing that we can all appreciate very quickly. So Joel was not doing his job watching the machine, and it got really quiet. Not this noise, this is, standard background noise. I wasn't hearing the normal. I was like, that's weird. Look at that Bluetooth. For those of you not familiar with CNCs like I'm not, there's supposed to be a cutter. I don't know what happened.
I tell you what's wrong with it.
Ain't got no carbide in it. So I got a lot of the lightning pockets done. The ones that we were working on were these little baby ones, but you see how rough those are. More and more rough, and then de-booped. I think the mistake I made there was a good mistake, good intention, and I learned another thing is that I went from a 1/2 inch tool down to a 1/4 inch tool, and there is 7/16, 3/8, and I should have cut more material with a thicker, more stable tool. I skipped a step and I paid for it, but we still have to make these over here, so there's still work to be done. The good news is that we can have a tool go and do all the cleanup on this, but I'm very happy, very happy with that.
Was the tool expensive?
No, that's like a $15 tool, maybe $20 tool. Cool. So the smaller ones are consumable, but my baby, the big one, it's in great, perfect shape. What I'm going to do is mill out the holes for each of these next, and so that way we always have a center location. If we go to flip it or move it or whatever the case is, we can always bounce it off of the center of this hole and this hole, and we now know where it is in 3D space again. This is what it looks like before. What you can see. Son of a bitch. God, that got me good. So you can see I'm radiusing the edge in there, and that's going to be wonderful for a piece like this that experiences so much heat. You don't want edges, where I'm getting with that. So look at that nice radius there. This is what it looked like before that step. I've left some extra material, so we'll go through and flatten out the whole bottom when we're done with that, but just to show you the radiusing that really makes this piece proper for an exhaust manifold flange. Oh, you can already see the beginning of this. Joel was getting all upset that these edges had little baby burrs on theirs. So I went and did that one too, but look at those pockets.
Fancy.
Yeah, I'm really happy with the finish. And the ball end mill, there's nothing catching. There's nothing that can really form a hardcore crack. Very happy with this. So the next step is making sure I make the correct cut in for each of the tubes, and then the shoulder that they sit on top of, so that way I can put them in there and then weld them into here. I got some work to do in here, and then we start tracing out the outside of this thing, cutting off these chunks here, here. What creates chips like this? This is pretty sick. I'm very proud of this. That's also very sharp, so be careful with that. But look at that. That is like an ideal chip. It takes a massive drill bit to do that. You know I'm onto something when I'm getting nice consistency like that, but watch this thing. This is saving me a lot of time and tool wear on my end mills by drilling the hole first so it doesn't have to take forever, slowly ramping down. Now this one I'm actually being really careful with because this shit will cut you like without even thinking. And what is nice is that I'm noticing that both sides of the cutter, because there's two teeth, we're cutting evenly. I'm not heat treating it or anything like that because I'm going slow enough, but then I'll have my other mill go inside and start there and then just cut from there instead of plunging and breaking the end mill. This is super exciting. Look at this. I just machined out just the outline edge so that way I can do the chamfer properly. Clean up the face, clean up these edges, and then clean up the edges of these bolt holes. It looks done, but it's not. It's really kind of a wild process. This is super exciting. It's in there nice and solid, perfect for him to weld. And to give it a little bit of tolerance so that weird shit with the pipe doesn't cause it problems. But there you go. There's the first step of the whole front piece. The Ursa's vertical pattern disappears because I'm going to do a spiral pattern, make it look nice and pretty, just presentable, even though it's going to get powder coated. But we'll clean up all these edges a lot more and it's going to look good. The finishing pass didn't finish it the way I wanted to because I made a major mistake early on in the whole process. Piece isn't ruined or anything like that. It's more of a cosmetic thing. But because I had the middle unsupported, and I totally forgot to do that, it happens when you're doing a lot of material removal. Unlike a drill bit, the mill is actually always pulling the material up or the head down, whereas a drill is pushing down. It's a very interesting, totally different mentality. But whenever you're hitting the side of an end mill, imagine that angle, it's trying to pull the mill down. And so if you have, like Isaiah experienced once on the manual one, if you don't lock the head on there, it'll start digging down and deeper into the piece. Because this was capable of vibrating so much, the tool was able to pick up, and as a result, it cut deeper than what my finish layer is. Again, cosmetic only. Isaiah found one mistake I made big time, and I don't know how I missed this, but one of my little braces are thinner than all the rest. We are going to trace this out, and I'm going to do it differently because if you look really close in the 3-rotor video, and I show it, is that these chunks clearly, look at that edge. I'm so proud of it. You get the material right to the edge. These chunks fall off, and they don't fall off magically. You keep cutting thinner and thinner, and all of a sudden it goes to fall off, and then the chunk has a lot of mass, and it hits the edge of the tool, and then the tool hits this, and you get gouges. So what I'm going to do is actually cut this down from the top of this piece to about 0.6 inches. So that's how thick this flange is going to be when it's all said and done. That'll leave everything on a little plate underneath there. I'll flip that upside down, and then now I've got a way of holding these down to the table with this upside down, and then I can surface the whole backside and they all fall off. This is hot off the press.
Jeez.
Look at that. She shines with tons of extra light, but I'm so happy with this. And it's kind of neat because this is the first time where I've cut a steel piece out without cutting it fully out. But it is cut to its full depth. It's just that the material's an extra 80 thousandths or so, I think it is. And so when we go to put it in safely on the backside and then cut the whole backside out, everything, all the pieces will fall off. I got 2 more operations to do on this side, but really, what you see is what you get here. We've got slots for all the rotors, which the perfectionist in me wants these not to be all slotted, but easier to install them. If you're putting it in like an angle like this, it makes it easier to install, but you know, you'll center it to the bolt holes. I'm going to take more material on the backside, especially between the rotors, because it's just unnecessary transfer of heat, and I've got plenty of rigidity. So I'm going to design that next, but we're going to cut the tapers in these holes, we're going to cut the whole backside out, and we have a 4-rotor exhaust flange. Oh, look at how clean that transition is. I have to do one nice little bit of code right for that lip right there, but other than that, God, that looks good. These 4 holes all look the same, and I'm going to figure out a solid way of using 2 holes to mount the plate to the table, but not warp it. So I have to get creative with how I do this and how I constrain the piece of metal, because we don't want these in the way, because we're going to just kind of surface this whole back thing, and all of these extra chunks will fall off. And so gotta be a little creative. You'll see what I come up with. You didn't tell me the camera was on. Here's what I've got set up right now. I've got these 2. 4 would probably be better, but I cannot put these on the outside edges because this material is way thicker, because I cut only from basically here to here. So what I'm going to do first, this is going to be a little controversial for me, is I actually have the machine coming in somewhere in here or here, and it's going to start tracing it out. And it's not cutting the back side of this yet, but it's going to cut on the outside of that. And so I'm hoping, well, that chunk's definitely going to fly up under the machine, but we're going to go and do half the thickness, and then maybe even pull the machine thing out and then put it on the bandsaw. Like I want those chunks gone, and then the second part of that will be cleaning the whole backside up. But we have to make sure, I made this mistake once before, you have to account for these, because as the machine's coming through, it'll just clip right through them. So you have to kind of model them. So that's about as bad as it's going to get. I'm okay with that. We're going to take this piece out now, run it through the bandsaw, clean up all the rough edges, and then set it up to be completely flat. Now we don't have to worry about the tool crushing into this area. We can just basically just let the machine eat. So with minimal manual labor and minimal real effort, I've got the piece generally cut out. You can see that I wasn't really trying to get exact to it because it doesn't really matter. So now I can actually take the CNC, flatten it out, and remember, this side and this side, while they are relevant to each other, all that matters is the flatness of this side. So what I need to make sure is the way I mount it now, I don't mount it where I'm bending it, but now that the whole front side's all the same height, instead of having chunks of metal, I can try and square it all up. Use these two, and then we've got a pretty flat piece. We'll let the machine do its business, take it down until it's all completely the same finish, and that is our machine finish that goes to the motor. Maybe I'll take those pockets out of here, here, and here. That's the end of this piece. We're gonna get pretty aggressive on what we're doing here. This being a finishing thing, I don't want it to collide with these nut heads. I actually have these smaller ones, smaller diameter. The tool will try and cut like right on this edge, and so I don't care if it actually cuts the bolt. I just don't want it to then tip the tool and affect my surface finish. What is really nice is, see these holes? These are for soft draws on a vise. I actually put the hole through this, the bolt through that, and so I have 360 hole support, so that way it's not trying to flex or bend this thing. So this whole thing's nice and flat. Even this middle one's kind of nice and supported in there, so it's nice and solidly supported. That's a good sign that it's just right on the edge. The only thing I have to worry about is that damn height of the nut. It looks really promising, and I'm very happy with what progress I've made. This only took an hour to do, and I even took it down in ways I never felt comfortable doing. And so there's no burrs, there's no nothing. I'm very, very happy with this. I'm curious to see, this is 98% of the finished product right here. That is very flat. It looks very textured, but it's not. And so what we'll do is, when Isaiah welds, we'll go ahead and do this whole thing with a face mill, this one right here, and make it really smooth. But I wanted to try this texture, and it only took an hour.